Hi everyone, welcome to Functional Skills English. We are on week 16. Hope you've had a good weekend. So first of all, I just want to remind you that if you're watching this video, you really should have already been on Google Classroom and found the day and time of your lesson in the stream and clicked on that link where your tutor or tutors would be waiting to say hello to you, explain what's going on in the lesson, and hopefully direct you to this video. So this video is a recording of the lesson that we would have had if you'd have been in college. We were actually due to have reading exams this week and next week. Unfortunately, they can't go ahead at the present time because we're all working from home. As soon as we know what's going on with those exams, we will communicate that to you. So please don't worry. We just don't have all the information to be able to let you know at the moment. What we do know, though, is that we need to keep learning and we need to keep brushing up on these skills that we've already got so that when we can get back into college and you are able to sit in exam, hopefully you can pass that exam. So the first thing I'd like you to do is have a look on Google Classroom. So Google Classroom, if you go to classwork on week 16, you should be able to see the things that we need for this session. So if you click on classwork, it will come up with all the weeks. You just need to find week 16, which is here, and you can see it's called Writing Letters, KC5. So if you click on that, the things that will be there will be this video uploaded. There'll also be complaint letter, which is your brief, label the letter layout, a document that you're going to use very shortly, and then also writing a letter, your response. Now this one is the one that you are going to be typing your responses on. So anything that I ask you to do during this lesson, you're going to need to note it down on this Google document here. If you're working on paper, obviously write it on paper, take some pictures when you've finished, and then upload them to turn in your work. Okay, so once you've got everything that you need, which should just be this one for the time being, so your responses, because what we're going to do actually is we're going to start by doing a quiz. Okay, now the topic of the session is letter writing, so obviously the quiz is going to be all about letter writing. What you can do here is you can, let me just get the PowerPoint back up. Again, you can write down your responses on paper. You can maybe shout them out at the screen if you like to, whatever you fancy. We're going to go through the questions together and we're going to do the answers immediately so that you get feedback. Okay, so let's start with question 1. Before you write anything, you should always figure out what. Do you think it's A, why are you writing? So the purpose. B, who are you writing to? Your audience. C, how your text should be laid out, the format. Or do you think it's D, all of these things? So make a note on your paper or on your Google document. Do you think it's A, B, C, or D? Okay, are we ready for the correct answer? Yeah, so, gone too far. It was D, all of these. So we definitely need to know why we're writing so that we know what kind of arguments to make and we know what kind of language to use. We also need to know who we're writing to, again, so we know what kind of language to use. If we're writing for children, that's going to be very different to if we were writing for teenagers or adults. How our text should be laid out, well, we need to know the format so that we need to know what it looks like. For example, today we're going to be writing letters, so we need to know how a letter is laid out. So the correct answer was D, all of these. And that is something that you should do before you write anything. Figure out the why, the who, and the what. Okay? All right, next question. When writing a letter, your address goes, where do you think it goes? Do you think it's A on the left, B on the right, or do you think it's C in the middle? Okay, the correct answer is the right-hand side. A good way to remember this, you're always right. This is the way I remember it. If you're also right-handed, that helps. Think, I'm always on the right. I am always right. Sorry if you're left-handed. Okay, so that means then question 3, where do you think the recipient address goes? Does this go on the left-hand side, also on the right-hand side, or does this go in the middle? What do you think? A, B, or C? And the correct answer was A, the left-hand side. So your address goes on the right, their address goes on the left. So recipient, remember, means the person receiving the letter. Now, you can lay these addresses out like this, where they're sort of staggered, or you can lay them out like this, where they're completely in line with each other. It doesn't matter. As long as you're on the right and they're on the left, they're in the correct place. Okay, let's move on then. Question 4. Which part of the address should all be in capital letters? There's no multiple choice here. I just want you to write down the answer. If you need a little bit more time, just feel free to pause this video. Okay, the correct answer is the postcode. So the postcode is a mixture of letters and numbers. Every single letter in that postcode needs to be an uppercase letter. Okay? Okay, question 5. The first letter of every word in the address should start with what? Again, this is not multiple choice. I need you to write down what you think the correct answer is. So every word in the address should start with what? Anybody struggling, if you have a look at this, maybe there's a clue in there for you. Okay, and the correct answer is a capital letter. Of course it is. Now, this is really important, which is why it says important there, because these are what we call proper nouns. Proper nouns are things like people's names, names of places, names of towns and cities and countries and counties, days of the week and months of the year, brands, names of songs, names of movies. Anything that is a name of something, it needs a capital letter. So you can see there where it says Dear Mr. Important, both the title, so Mr. needs a capital M, and the beginning of the surname I needs a capital I. My name, capital M for Michelle, and also the capital S for Smith. My name is really important, as is yours. It should always have capital letters. You can see the address of college as well. We need capital letters for each letter right at the beginning. Common mistake people make when they write South Yorkshire, they use an uppercase S but a lowercase y. Yorkshire is still the name of the county, so we still need capital letters for both of those. Okay, let's move on. Question 6. If you use the salutation, dear sir or madam, how should you sign off your letter? Do you think it's A, see ya, B, yours faithfully, or C, yours sincerely? The correct answer, of course, is B, yours faithfully. If you do not know, the name of the person and you're having to write dear sir or madam or to whom it may concern, then you always sign off yours faithfully and then your name. If you do know the name of the person and you're using that name, so dear Mr. Important, dear Michelle, dear Mr. Smith, then it's yours sincerely and then your name. So if you know the name, you're sincere. If you don't know the name, you're full of faith. It's the way I remember it. Okay. And one I was taught in school was you can't have two S's together. So you can't have sir and sincerely. Okay, question 7. Where should you put the date on a formal letter? Do you think it's A, the top right, B, under your sign-off, or C, under either postcode? Okay, and the correct answer is C. It can go under either of the postcodes. So if your postcode is here, you would usually put the date there. So it is in line with the recipient postcode. It could go up there as well. It doesn't have to be in line with the recipient one, as long as it comes after the addresses. It could go on the other side as well. As long as it's not the first thing you write or the last thing you write, it should be fine. Okay, and the last question, I would like you to spell the word sincerely, please. We just talked about that word. It was on the screen briefly. If you were going to write yours sincerely, do you know how to spell sincerely? You might want to pause this video here for a couple of minutes while you write that down. Okay, how do we spell sincerely? What do we think? Did anybody get it right? S-I-N-C-E-R-E-L-Y. A really good way of remembering this is split it up into 2. Since plus rely. It's the way I always do it. I spell it like this in my head. Like I do with Wednesday, I still go Wednesday. I split it up so that I'm not going to spell it incorrectly. And it's a tricky word, sincerely. There's a few E's there. People usually get them the wrong way around. We usually have too many I's in sincerely. So a really good way, split it up, since and rely, sincerely. And remember, we only use that on a formal letter if we know the person that we are addressing the letter to. Okay, brilliant. So that's the end of the quiz. Hopefully that highlighted to you some things that you know already and maybe some things that you don't. What we're going to do for this session now is we are going to talk a little bit about how to write a letter, and then we're going to write one. We're going to use the correct layout that we've just talked about, and we're going to try and use appropriate language for our audience and our purpose. Okay, so now we've been through the layout, I want to see what you remember. So I want you to label the letter with the layout features in the correct place. So this is where you are going to need some of the documents on Google Classroom. So if you go to Google Classroom, I said that we'd have some things here. Now this is the one that we need. Label the letter layout. I don't know why it doesn't just switch from tab to tab when I'm sharing my screen. It used to. For some reason, it doesn't like me today. Hopefully we can all see that. Now, the main body of the letter organized into paragraphs, that's obvious. Of course, that's where that goes. But what I want you to do is figure out what goes here, what goes here, what goes here, what goes here, and then what goes in the last 2 boxes at the bottom. Now, on the example on the PowerPoint that I've showed you, it says my address / their address. So which one goes here on the right-hand side? All you need to do when you figured that out is if you double click and just put your cursor inside that box and then type in there whatever you think goes there. So if you think it's the date, for example, in a formal letter, you just type in the date, save and close, and that'll save that for you. Okay. Same, if you change your mind and you decide, oh no, I don't think it is the date, delete it, write whatever you need, press save and close. And this is one of the documents that you're going to need to hand in at the end of the session so we know that you've labelled the letter correctly. If you're stuck, a good idea, it might be to go back through the quiz and see what we talked about. Obviously, if you're really stuck and you need some help, make sure you're on that Google Meet and you can ask your tutor who is there. Okay, so you might want to pause this video now for a couple of minutes, label the letter, and then we'll go through where everything should be and make sure we're all on the right page. Okay. Okay, so hopefully we've all labelled our letter layout and it should look something like this. So the addresses, both of them in the right place. So your address on the right-hand side, the recipient address on the left-hand side. Remember, you're always right. Next up, the salutation should come under the recipient address and the date should come in line with the recipient postcode. We'd already got the main body of the letter filled in. So the final thing that should have gone in the last two boxes was the sign off, which would either be yours sincerely or yours faithfully. And then finally, your name at the end. So that is what a letter, a formal letter should look like. And that is what I expect the letters that you write for me today to look like. Any questions? If you're not sure about anything, make sure you go onto that Google Meet where your tutor is and ask any questions that you've got. If you've labelled anything incorrectly, go back now to that letter layout, make sure everything's correct, okay? Because that can be your point of reference when you actually start writing your own letter today. Okay, now we said at the beginning that before we actually start writing anything, we need to answer some questions. And there are 3 questions that we need to answer. Who are we writing to? Why are we writing? And what is it that we're writing? So let's have a look at our writing task for today. Now you can find this task again on Google Classroom. It says complaint letter. I will show you that again in a second, but this is the scenario and the task which I've just taken from it. So the scenario, you pay a monthly subscription to Netflix, but your account has been hacked by someone and you cannot access it. You have brought this to the attention of customer service via the online chat, but they have been unhelpful. So your task, write a letter of complaint to the head office complaints team at 22 Torrington Place, 3rd floor, Suite C, London, WC1E 7HP. Okay. So let's figure out a couple of things because we've got quite a lot of information there. We need to decide who we're writing to, why we're writing, and what we are writing. Now, the what, the format, is the easiest one. We're writing a letter, aren't we? It tells us in the task, write a letter of complaint. And we've also got an address there, the recipient address, so we know who to send it to. We don't have a name, though. It just says the head office complaints team. We're presuming that that is a group of people. It's not just one person. So we're going to have to use the salutation, dear sir or madam here. However, if we're writing to a head office complaints team, we know that we're going to have to be quite formal. So in terms of our audience, we know that we're not going to be saying, all right, mate. We're going to have to keep our language formal because we don't know these people. So why are we writing this? Well, we're writing to complain, aren't we? It tells us that in the task as well. What are we complaining about? We're not necessarily complaining that someone's hacked our account. We're complaining because nobody has sorted out this situation for us. It says that we've spoken to somebody over the online chat, but they've been unhelpful. So we're going to complain to Netflix. So our audience is the complaints team. We're going to be formal. We don't know the name though, so we're going to have to say dear sir or madam. Our purpose is to complain. So there might be an element of persuasion here. We might be asking, rhetorical questions. We might be repeating ourselves. We might be exaggerating a little bit to get our point across. The bottom line is we want to convince these people that we have been wronged and we need something to be done about it. And finally, the format is a letter. So we know that it needs some addresses, it needs the date, it needs a salutation, it needs a sign off at the end. Okay, so this is the complaint letter that is on Google Classroom that I've screenshotted here. So it has the scenario, it has the task, and it also has the bullet points that you need to start each new paragraph. So when you move on to a no bullet point, you should be leaving a new line. You should be starting a new line. It also gives you an idea of the word count. So if you're doing entry 1 or entry 2, we're expecting at least 4 sentences. If you're entry 3, we're expecting at least 75 words over 4 paragraphs. And if you're level 1, or also if you're level 2, we're expecting at least 250 words over 4 paragraphs. So although you're all doing the same task, if you're entry 1 and 2, you're not going to need as much depth and detail as those of you that are entry 3 and level 1. So the higher the level, the more detail that we are going to expect. It also reminds you there that when you've finished, you need to make sure that you're proofreading. Okay, so what I want you to do now is I want you to write your letter. So you need to go to your responses, your response sheet, that Google document. In fact, if I open one up now, it's not going to share the tab, it's just going to stop me presenting. So apologies, let me just quickly go back. Where is it? Writing a letter. So you've opened up the Writing a Letter, Your Responses Week 16. So you should all have one of these. The first thing that you might want to do is write your address. Now you don't have to put your real address. You can just put my address, my street, my town, postcode. It's up to you. Now we said that that needs to go on the right hand side. So I'll just move that over to the right with the tools up there. And then I need to come back over here in order to write the recipient address. Now the recipient address is given to us. It's something like 22 Torrington Place, and you would continue like that. Now, wherever there's a comma, that is where you should start a new line in terms of the address. Can't remember what it all was, but I know London was one of the last ones, and then there was a postcode. Once you've done that, you will need to put the date, and then you'd also need to start with your dear sir or madam. And then you probably want to think about your introductory sentence. Now, your introductory sentence can always start with the phrase, I am writing to. Now, what comes after that is going to be different depending on what your question is. Now, in this case, we're writing to complain, aren't we? So we could actually use the question to help us. So I am writing to complain. And what are we complaining about? Your customer service. Oops. Your customer service department or team, whatever you want to call it, being rather unhelpful when I telephoned earlier this week to discuss an issue with my Netflix account. Okay, that could be your introductory sentence. So you can see that we need a capital letter for Netflix because this is the name of the brand. Remember, that would be a proper noun. I've also decided to use the word telephoned instead of called or phoned. Why is that? Well, we're being formal, and the formal full word of the word phone or called, it would be telephoned, wouldn't it? So I'm going to try and use full form words all the time. And that would actually get me that first bullet point done. So the first bullet point on the PowerPoint, if I just go back to it. is why are you writing? And that's what we've just done together. Now, the next bullet point is details of the issue you are facing. Now, here you're going to have to make things up. Okay, so you might say, make up a date, for example. On the, I don't know, 4th of December, I realized that my account had been hacked, or I couldn't access my account. I tried resetting my password, tried removing my payment details. Whatever you want to make up, because remember, this is not true, you need to make those details up there to give the person you're writing to all the details, all the context of the complaint. That's how it would work in real life. So you can make up as much details as you want. So you need to make sure that whatever you say, though, you're consistent with it, and if you're referring back to it later on in the letter, that you remember what you said. The next bullet point there, how is this negatively impacting you? Okay, I'm sure you all have Netflix. Think about using this. We're all stuck at home. Netflix has become everybody's best friend at the moment, hasn't it? We want to sit on the sofa and we want to binge all our favorite TV shows. It's negatively impacting us in that sense because we don't have anything to relax with anymore. We don't have the entertainment that we usually have. Maybe you want to talk about educational programs or documentaries that are on there that you need to watch to help with your college work. Maybe it's to entertain your children. Remember, you could be a mother of 3 if you wanted to be in this. Make it up. You don't have to be you. It's costing you money still, maybe, and you're not receiving the service that you're paying for. Think about all the negatives of this, how it's impacting you, and exaggerate those, because you need to make them feel bad for you. Because that brings us on to the next bullet point. What would you like them to do? Now, you can ask for whatever you want, really. Perhaps you just want a refund for the past 3 months that you've not been able to access this. Maybe you want, I don't know, free Netflix for a year. Maybe you want them to give you some sort of voucher or some sort of discount for your subscription for the next year. Maybe you want a written apology. It's completely up to you what you ask for, but just make sure that what you're asking for is appropriate. Yeah, so you can't really ask Netflix to give you a brand new 4K 60-inch TV to compensate you, because that's not really realistic. And finally, it says ask for a response. Now, this can be as simple as, please get back to me as soon as possible. I would appreciate a response as soon as possible. Please respond at your earliest convenience. There's lots of different phrases that you could use there to ask for a response. Just ensure that whatever language you use, that it's formal. Okay, and then the last thing that you would do is you would say, yours faithfully, because remember, we don't know the name of the people that we're writing to, and then your full name, and remember, your full name needs to be in capital letters. All right, so you should have in front of you this brief here. You can access it on Google Classroom, or if you're happy to read it here, the writing's probably a little bit smaller. It's completely up to you. And you also need your responses. You're writing a letter, your response week 16 to actually write your letter. Now, what I'd like you to do is I want you to pause the video now, and I want you to write your letter. Don't spend any longer, really, than 45 minutes on this. And that would be as well if you're level 1, level 2. If you're in the entry levels, it is not going to take you as long. Any problems, any issues at all, go back through the video, check anything that you think you might have forgotten or you missed. If you really can't find the answers to your questions, or you're really struggling, please make sure that you're on that Google Meet with your tutor. That's what they're there for. They're there to help you. Okay, so pause this video now, write your letter. Good luck. Use all the information that's available to you, and think about those 3 things that we defined at the beginning: who you're writing to, why you're writing, and what you are writing. Okay, well done. Hopefully everybody has now written their letter and you've had some feedback or questions answered from your tutor if you needed it. What you need to do now is what you need to do at the end of everything that you write. You you need to make sure you do some proofreading. So I've just put a checklist up here. The first one, and one of the most important things, is have you written in paragraphs? I did prompt you to write in paragraphs here by telling you to use the bullet points as a cue. Hopefully you've done that. If you haven't, you need to go through your letter and figure out where you would put the paragraphs. Paragraphing is really important. It organizes the text for us, and it will definitely be a marking criteria on your exam. Next, have you used capital letters at the beginning of every sentence? If you haven't, make sure you amend those now. Is every sentence got end of sentence punctuation? Is there a full stop or a question mark if you're answering a question mark at the end of every sentence? Check for these now. Very easy to miss off. Make sure that they're there. Have you got things like apostrophes if you've shortened down any words like don't or won't or I'm or theirs? Really, when you're writing a formal letter, we shouldn't be shortening down words. Remember, we should be writing the full form. So we should be writing do not, will not, I am, there is, for example. But if you have shortened down any words, just make sure that you've at least got the apostrophe to show where you're missing out the letters. And finally, if you've used any homophones, have you used the correct ones? So I've chosen there, and there here just because they're the most commonly misspelt words. So there, T-H-E-R-E, remember, would be like over there, for example, a place. T-H-E-I-R would be belonging to them, there. And finally, T-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E is short for they are. Go through, if you've used there at all in your writing, make sure you've used the correct there. Now, this is just a guide. There might be other things that you know that you always get wrong. For example, a really common one is not capitalizing the letter I when you're using it on its own. So when you're using it as a pronoun, for example, I did this or I did that, it always has to be a capital letter when it's on its own. If you know that you always forget to capitalize your I, just scan your letter for the I's and change them. Anything else that you might think, oh, I know I've done that wrong, or I know I always forget to do that. So make sure you proofread for that now. Okay, at the bottom there's also a box that says spellings I need to revise. I appreciate that if you're not sure how to spell a word, how are you going to know whether you've spelt it right or not? Fair enough. However, there are times when you know for a fact that you haven't spelled a word right because it just doesn't look right, or you know that you always spell that word wrong. Make a concerted effort now, write down that word, make a list of spellings that you need to revise. Look them up using an online dictionary. Just type the word into Google. It will usually come up with the correct spelling in the absence of you having a paper dictionary. So pause the video, give yourself 5 to 10 minutes, do some really thorough proofreading and make sure that you amend any issues that you find. Okay, so the final thing I'd like you to do today is I just want you to check that all that stuff that we talked about in that quiz at the beginning, that you have in the right place. So can you either, if you're on paper, grab yourself a highlighter, or perhaps if you're using Google Docs, you can use the highlight tool and just highlight the addresses if they are in the correct place. So your address should be on the right, the recipient address should be on the left. Can you also highlight the salutation? You should have written dear sir or madam, or possibly to whom it may concern. And also, can you highlight where you've signed off and you've put your name? And the sign off should be yours faithfully, and your name should both have capital letters for the beginning, the first letter of your first name and the first letter of your surname. We've already checked paragraphs, but have you covered all the bullet points as well? The bullet points are a key marking criteria, so you need to make sure that you covered all those bullet points that were in your brief. The why you're writing, the situation, how it's negatively impacted you, what you want Netflix to do, and ask for a response. So again, just pause this video for 5 minutes or so, check that all those things are covered, highlight the things you've been asked to highlight. Once you've done that, you should be able to answer those last 2 questions. How did it go? So can you write down one thing that you think went really well? And can you write down one thing that you found quite difficult today? Perhaps the things that went well, maybe you're really confident with how to lay out a letter now. Maybe you've got a really good imagination, so you gave lots of detail about all those bullet points. What did you find difficult though? Maybe you're not very good at spelling and grammar and punctuation. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you're really good at spelling, grammar and punctuation, but actually you find difficult the making the stuff up bit. Yeah, the giving the depth and the detail about a sort of a contrived situation. Okay, so take a couple of minutes though and just do a little bit of self-reflection. What did you master today? And what do you think you still need to develop moving forward? It can be something as simple as, you know, I felt like I managed to get the word count in the time, or it could be something like, I'm really impressed with my spelling today. I'm really impressed with the fact that I remembered all my paragraphs today. So take a few minutes, pause the video, make sure you write down those self-assessment reflections. Okay, so what we've done today, we have planned and we've written a letter. Hopefully we've used the correct layout and we've used appropriate language for our audience. What you need to do now is you need to go back to Google Classroom and you need to turn in your work where your assignment is. So we need to be turning in the label, our letter layout, and we need to turn in our writing a letter, your responses, week 16. Once that's turned in, your tutor will mark that for you. They'll send you some feedback on Google Classroom. You'll be able to read it and respond if needed. Okay, hopefully this lesson was helpful. Thank you very much for your hard work, and I will see you next time.